All I'm saying is the Cabal needs to be fired. Okay? But I'm okay not punishing them. I'm okay with not putting them in jail. I'm okay with not waterboarding them, even though sometimes I want to. And a lot of other folks that have gone through what I've gone through kind of want to. But I'm okay with that and turning the other cheek. But they got to come clean.
Right. I mean, there's remote influencing. I think they probably started to do that at the same time. Like Lynn Buchanan would never say that he did that, and he was ordered not to do that, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was like OpCon to somebody else. And then there's probably things beyond that. The weird thing about this topic, too, is if you start to look into this abyss, it starts to look back, which is also a whole other topic.
Well, it is. It's interesting. You know, there's people talk about the Heisenberg principle, where if you look at subatomic particles with beams of electrons, you know, those electrons affect what you're looking at. But there's a industrial organizational equivalent of that in psychology called the Hawthorne Effect. And it was this study about factories and efficiency. And so they wanted to determine, you know, I had new lights. I think it was at the advent of maybe fluorescent lighting in factories. Mm-hmm. So they install the new lights and they want to see if productivity is going to go up or down, right? Over a certain amount of time. So they put in the new lights and productivity goes up. And so the folks that sponsored this study, right, which is obviously the light bulb company, you know, they're like, hey, start selling, sell, right? But wait, hang on. So one of the scientists in this said, hey, hang on a second. What we really got to do is we got to do a control here. So they did a control with whatever the existing lighting was. But in order to double dissociate, they had to take the lights back out to see if production
the original
decreased, right? So that's a double dissociation. So you had a control to start, and then you add a treatment, right? And something happens. But then you got to remove that treatment and see if it comes back down. So they removed the treatment. And to their surprise, productivity went up again. It went up, and then it leveled off, and then they took the lights away, and then it didn't go down. It went back up again. So they're, what the?
Yeah, it's the change. It's the change. It's not the lights, right?
Yeah, so it turned out that any time that they changed the lights, there were a bunch of people walking around with clipboards. So it was the clipboards, right? Because everybody was like, oh, crap, people are watching us. So, yeah, of course you're going to be more productive. So I think probably the guy that published that was a guy named Hawthorne, or maybe he was the person that said, I'm not an IO psychologist, I'm perfectly aware of it. But you've got to be careful about that across all of this, right? Across all of these experimental treatments. So, yeah, but we do have tools now that we didn't have during Hawthorne's time, right? We got IR, we've got motion sensors, we got all sorts of things that we can do. And here's another aspect of this that is really, really important that is missed by a lot of people, is there is a need sometimes to be deceptive in behavioral science, because you can't tell the people that you're studying what the hell you're studying. Right? And so this is sort of Jane Goodall studying apes without being involved with them. There are a lot of scientists that are very critical of her, like, okay, Jane, you did great stuff, you know, and you write really well, but that's not science. What the heck are you doing?
When the United States and China clash, the world will never be the same, especially when forces beyond reality threaten to intervene. What if the United States went to war with the People's Republic of China? How would these rivals fight for supremacy on land, sea, air, and across the stochastic streams of time? What wonder weapons would be unleashed? What horrors would emerge from the irradiated sludge of the South China Sea? What heroes would rise and forever change the course of history? Tread into the deepest and darkest dimensions of the multiverse, gaze through a kaleidoscope of fractured realities, and bear witness to the disturbing visions of World War III from today's greatest minds in science fiction, fantasy, and horror. Weird World War, China. Available now from Baen Books at Baen.com.
You are violating the Prime Directive by living with those apes, right? Or the chimps or whatever. So in order to study them in their natural habitat, you got to have a duck blind. You got to have a monkey blind. You got to blend it with the environment. And so if you're going to do that in a psychology laboratory, well, you can't come in a camouflage uniform, right? I mean, that's not really going to... My sister-in-law one time came up to a guy in the base exchange, and he's shopping in camouflage, right? And she walks up to him and she whispers, "It's not working." And then it took him a bit, and he just started cracking up. She walked away. So you've got to do something else. You've got to pretend that the reason that we're doing this study is X. And then what you're really looking at, and you still do X, right? Just like the CIA uses front companies all the time, right? The best cover is a legitimate company.
Right.
You know, that's been in all the spy novels, so I'm not giving anything away. But then you also look for Y. And you don't tell them you're looking for Y. You tell them you're looking for X, and that the nature of the study is this. And so I bring all this up in the context of sometimes they, whoever they are, interdimensional, travelers from the future, extraterrestrials, in my world, those three are so linked. If you can do one, if you can travel faster than light, if you can bend space-time,
then you're a time traveler and you're a space. Yeah.
And you can, so you are a time traveler by nature, right? By the physics of what you got. So in any case, if they are studying us, it makes sense that sometimes they're invisible, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they just don't care. Maybe we're teaching them something about science by telling them, hey, every time you look at us, we're looking at you, so you better be disappearing, otherwise you're not going to get our natural behavior. So that's also some of my perspective on a little bit of this drone stuff that's going on. But we can talk about that some other time.
Well, when you say your perspective, do you see it as there were so many narratives that came out about that it was... By the end of it, it was the latest president, said that, I'll give you an answer. And the answer's like just as bad as all the others. It's just like, oh, don't worry. FAA approved all of it for research. Research? You're flying a SUV-sized drone over Salem nuclear power plant? Like, are you nuts? Yeah. Right? Anyway, obviously that's not what it was. I wouldn't be surprised if we had drones in the sky to just flood the zone, to just as a fig leaf, say, oh yeah, there are drones. And, you could be honest about it, but they're not all our drones. The other thing too is the use of the word drone is actually very curious. Right. It's like I'm probably completely wrong about this, but it's like neuro-linguistic programming. It's just, you put drones out there and then everybody looks up at goes through that filter of drone when it's something else.
To advertise on Through a Glass Darkly, email throughaglassdarkly@gmail.com.
So
in my other research life, after my first trip through grad school, I was into robotics, unmanned systems, as you may know. Spent a lot of time at DARPA. I wrote the first capstone requirements document for drones. I had an indoor and outdoor annex. It was called the SOMROV, Special Operations Miniature Robotic Vehicles requirements document. And it had 6 annexes. One was outdoor, indoor, aerial. One was surface, subsurface, aquatic. And one was outdoor, indoor, ground, terrestrial. So 6 different types of miniature robots, and all these were designed to be or intended to be carried by a special ops operator in a backpack. And the idea was whenever you get to an obstacle that a human physically can't fit in, then we send this little guy through the barbed wire, chuck it over the fence, launch it with surgical tubing, right? Nothing sophisticated, but we're able to get inside that last half mile, right? Where it's the most difficult. So anyway, blah, blah, blah. reason I bring all that up is I was painstakingly avoiding the word drone because drone came out of the 60s as a dumb bee, right? So drones in a beehive are the males that they pretty much just do one thing. They can barely even fly, right? And so drones in the 60s and 70s, Vietnam era, were just dumb missiles that you're going to pretend are an airplane to shoot them down. That's it. There was no intelligence on board. So to use the word drone dismisses any machine learning, any actual ability for that thing, that aerial vehicle, unmanned aerial vehicle, to reason about its environment, react in that environment, and take adaptive behavior into the game. So drone is a dumbing down of what's in the sky. So you could have a very sophisticated unmanned aerial vehicle that ain't a drone. But as you just pointed out, it's a linguistic programming mechanism because that's what we call them. And now that in the Ukraine, you call them ground drones. And I'm like, oh my God, people, what are you talking about?
Wait, they're calling what ground drones? Like the aerial ones?
No, ground robots so four-wheeled or little mini tanks or whatever, kind of like the stuff I worked on at DARPA. They call them ground drones now, as opposed to UGV, unmanned ground vehicle. Or
I was about to say exactly that.
UGVs, whatever. Yeah. So don't get me started on the verbiage alignment.
You probably don't have the time, but I wrote like a 1,200 word short story that was published in Vice Media in 2017, and it was about FastCam delivered anti-personnel drones.
Absolutely.
So they're delivered via FastCam. They kind of parachute in, and then anything that looks human and moves, they run toward it.
Absolutely.
And explode, right? So anyway, that's not here nor there.
There's no question that somewhere in the halls of DARPA, there's a full program about that, without a doubt. So who knows if your consciousness wasn't being broadcast into a DARPA program manager somewhere, and they actually took your idea and sold it and put a bunch of money into it. Or maybe it's the other way around. Who knows? But you have probably the other way. You have 1,200 stories. Never mind 1,200 words, bro. You are really prolific, and thank you for that.
Yeah, but I don't sell. It's hard to sell those things anymore. Well, there's a cultural reason that we don't need to get into. But there's other darker stuff too. I think there was a story about CRISPR. People will call this racist, but it's true. You can target specific genes that can, that are overlap certain phenotypes and stuff like that, and vice versa. So I just did quick, high level research and just developed one of those things in a story. And it was bad. It was basically, if you didn't have Han Chinese, there's like a specific receptor. I can't remember what the gene was, but it basically, any child that was born with this thing, it was infected it like the Zika virus with a mosquito. And any child that was kind of non-Han Chinese or kind of Native American, because it's similar, would develop this condition. It's like a skin condition where you just couldn't go outside. Otherwise your skin would just be toasted. Yeah. So that stuff is out there. It's real, right? Or that capability is real. But anyway, I don't mean to get into. Okay. So in terms of how do you think this quote unquote disclosure is going to progress? Is this something that's never going to come out? Is this there's factions struggling, and whoever wins that struggle gets more out? Is it something that was set in 1947 or 1952, and there's just this inexorable timeline? Is it something that's being set by some non-human intelligence or some future human intelligence as to when? I just throw a lot of stuff out there, a lot of possibilities.
Sure.
How do you think this is going to progress? Yeah. And knowing that some people who are closer to it than most of the rest of the world.
Yeah, well, I got to emphasize again, I have never been read in on anything even remotely related to UFOs, UAPs, NHI, or anything like that. I have been read in on quite a few special access programs. I started my own, and it lasted like 2 months, and it was canceled. And that's an interesting story on its own. But my perspective is that we're already in disclosure, right?
Mm-hmm.
When Lou Elizondo and Chris Mellon were able to get those videos released back in 2017, or maybe they got released in 2018 after the story in 2017, right around that time frame, and they weren't assassinated, right? That was disclosure, in my perspective. When Dave Grush took an oath with Ryan Graves on one side, David Fravor on the other side, and I wish they had Alex Dietrich in there as well, Dave Fravor's wingwoman. But, she didn't want any of this stuff. None of them wanted to be famous. But in any case, when those three guys said what they said in front of Congress and they didn't get it whacked, all right. So this is disclosure for sure. And then you have Tim Gallaudet, Lou Elizondo, Mike Gold, and Brian, I'm blanking the journalist. Well, he is, because SH something, I forget.
Oh, yeah. Brian?
Yeah. So that may not be his first
There's
name.
Christopher,
anyway,
there's Chris Sharp, there's a number of others.
No, the four guys that testified on 13 November. So I've known and met three of them, and I just haven't met the last one. So in any case, those guys.
He's like he lives in Berkeley. I could tell you all about him, but I can't remember his name.
I know. It's called tip of the tongue syndrome. It's a really important. I will remember it. You'll remember it in the shower. I may remember it in 15 minutes.
Yeah, see, I remember your face. I had no idea what your name was, right? But I could tell you were wearing glasses. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
It's the mysteries of the mind, right? It's mysteries of the mind. So when those folks came out, right, and they didn't have a sudden car accident, so disclosure is here.
Yeah, speaking of car accidents, that's how John Mack went, right? In the UK, yeah. Look, it could have been normal, right? Who knows?
It's an interesting situation. But in any case, all these folks are still alive. I'm still talking to them. And Jake, just had lunch with him last week. And so this information is coming forward, and it's not linear. We are on an asymptote here, or not an asymptote. We're on a So this
hyperbolic curve. Right?
This is ramping up really intensively, especially over the last couple of years. And so I credit all those folks as heroes for taking tremendous risk on behalf of their fellow humans. And so disclosure is happening right now. I want to jump it and get ahead of it by establishing the conditions under which we grant everybody in the Cabal amnesty. That's what my book's all about. Under what conditions are you willing to grant these folks amnesty, right? And so my perspective, my conditions are, you got to come clean on the abduction phenomenon. Because you, government, that we paid you all of our taxpayer dollars, way more than you're letting on. I mean, Donald Rumsfeld, the day before 9/11, publicly announced, I saw it walking down the hallway in the Pentagon on the 10th of September, 2001, announced $2.3 trillion lost accountability. I remember him making that announcement. And so the $3,000 toilet seat, right, for the C-17,
$50 million to condoms in Mozambique, that sort of thing.
Yeah, there you go.
$20 million play of Sesame Street in Iraq.
Right. Or the classic second lieutenant, semi looking around for a can of squelch, right? I mean, so.
Box of reticles with tanks, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Grid squares. So I think the vast majority of us would be willing to accept that if the government could tell us the reason why we did that was because we couldn't prevent your kids from being taken out of their beds. We couldn't prevent you from getting taken off of your mountain bike. We couldn't prevent, this, that, or the other person, Linda Napolitano, from being, pulled out of her apartment. We couldn't prevent any of these horrific situations that have been terrifying to our citizens. So as long as you are willing to come clean, that was happening, you knew it was happening, and we want access to every single record you have about that, then I'm willing to say, okay, I forgive you. And we won't put you in jail. Now, your salary is over. You are done. You are not allowed to be anywhere near any defense project ever again. Take whatever riches you made and fade away. Kind of like what Trump's doing with the federal government now, right? Not that I'm not taking a stance on that one way or another.
Well, it's like the same deal Fauci got, basically. Anyway, I'll just leave it at that.
I'm not taking a stance either way on any of that. All I'm saying is the cabal needs to be fired. Okay? But I'm okay not punishing them. I'm okay with not putting them in jail. I'm okay with not waterboarding them, even though sometimes I want to. And a lot of other folks that have gone through what I've gone through kind of want to. But I'm okay with that and turning the other cheek. But they got to come clean. And so that's...
Are you willing to fund their protection and the covering of their identities? Because it's one thing to protect them from justice from the U.S. government, but...
that's a really, really important issue, Sean. And I'm going to leave that up to the lawyers, right? That's to somebody, my little slice of the pie is using those silly EEGs to look at engagement of drone operators, right, or robot operators. But, there are people that spend their lives in the legal profession to figure that out. All I'm saying is that as an individual citizen, that those are the conditions under which I'm willing to vote for amnesty. And if amnesty means you get witness protection, okay, then we'll let that.
I mean, you'd probably have to. You would have to. I don't think
because they're not going to come clean unless it's safe, right?
Right.
That's all a lot of us want is to be safe, and so, and then go use your skills. I mean, some of these folks have tremendous skills that could benefit us in other ways. If you have been reverse engineering faster than light propulsion, well, don't you want that person working for NASA or the Federation or whatever, Starfleet, whatever we're going to create?
I have a darker alternative.
Okay.
$5 million to anybody who rats out the other guys. Every name. And then we...
Yeah. Yep.
Anyway, I'm not saying I'm just saying there are other ways. So for people who don't like your way, people like me can think of, more,
right.
Yeah.
Well, the focus on my effort is about forgiveness. So forgiving the government is one step.
Mm-hmm.
The second step is forgiving them, right? Because, and the way I couch this is look at what we do with subspecies on our planet, right? What do we do? Throughout the Cold War, we would abduct polar bears. We would have a helicopter, just like a frickin' flying disc, with guys with tranquilizers, tranquilize them, knock them out, descend on them, scoop their tissue, extract sperm, right? Extract eggs, mess with the cubs, and then fly away. And then once the tranquilizer wears off, how do we know that mother polar bear wasn't terrified? And how do we know that mother polar bear didn't wake up wondering, wait, my cubs were in front of me. Now I woke up, they're behind me. Why is that? How do we know that they aren't that we were totally disrupting their entire social structure, their family structure, like a lot of experiencers have had happen to them? Families totally destroyed across multiple generations.
And also their lives were destroyed because of the stigma that was associated with, and basically may have been created in order to keep this thing So, yeah, it's not black and white. And there's also probably gradations of gray. You can probably forgive most of these people, but there might be people out there who were hired hands to, make people disappear. Or,
right. So in our scenario, the helicopter pilot, is he guilty, right, of getting in there? The tranquilizer guy versus but the point is that those polar bears have scars just like we do, just like I have, just like Mario Woods has, just like Terry Lovelace has. So if we are doing that as a species with lower, I mean, look at the horrific stuff we do with bunnies, right? We test our perfume on them to see if it's going to burn their skin, So if we're going to demand respect for life here, we've got to be able to forgive them for doing similar stuff, right? So I'm going to inject a layer of compassion into what you just said, because I think a lot, and this is a hypothesis that I really want to test, but I'm not sure if I'll ever get there. But my hypothesis is that the people that are more hypnotizable, not the people, experiencers who are more hypnotizable have ended up with less disruption in their lives than people that were left hypnotizable. Because the post-hypnotic suggestions, the way that we can do this pharmacologically right now, we can
screen memories, right?
In the hippocampus, which are the two little horns at the base of your brain in here, brain stem area, basal ganglia area, and in the midbrain area, we can interdict memory consolidation right now pharmacologically. Sometimes we do it accidentally. Sometimes we do it as a byproduct, like of surgeries. I've had 21 surgeries to put my busted Humpty back together again. And that's just a bad testament to how clumsy I am as an athlete, right? That's all it tells you.
You can't be that clumsy. If you were in the unit, you can't be that clumsy.
Dude, I'm telling you, I'm a freaking knucklehead. But anyway, so we can intervene. So it makes sense that we can do that pharmacologically, right? Giving an injection, your anesthesia that you get, you don't remember anything. I remember counting down as, the mask was coming on, and that's it. I can tell you everything about the inside of that operating room once they wheel me in. But a lot of times nowadays, you don't even get that far. They give it to you out in the prep room. And so as you're going down the hallway, you don't get to see the lights or anything, right? If it's an emergency situation and they don't want to give you the injection until they get you in front of the doc, then maybe you'll remember that stuff. But after you get that injection, unless you wake up, I have had 2 times when I woke up in the middle of surgery because I have a high metabolism, so I burn through that stuff pretty quick. And I woke up talking one time. They reconstructed my thumb and my elbow, and I sat up, and there were big eyes around the mask, around the table, and somebody said a code word or something. I forget what it was. I think it was like, Rachel, And so she reached over, and all she did was, adjust the toggle on the IV, and it was like, boom, back out. So anyway, the reason I bring all that up is I consider that a measure of some sort of compassion, right? That the trauma, that they don't want us to remember that trauma. So I blew all of my stuff off until 2018. And then that hippocampal region, or is either that or maybe it was a backwash, that reignited some of those, that they approached, the memory got stitched together externally. And I don't want to get into the details of that. I'm willing to do that with anybody, anytime, but, for the neuroscience of it. But
just really quickly, when you said stitched together, was that something that happened just with your normal medical procedures or something that they may have done?
Yeah, that was a horrible misuse of verbiage. By stitched together, I mean that the hippocampus, what it does is it doesn't just migrate your memories out into the cortex, kind of like the RAM on your computer gets saved to your hard drive before you shut it down. So the hippocampus does that. That's part of this consolidation process. But also, when you fire your computer back up tomorrow morning to do the editing on this or whatever you're going to do, the hippocampus has the rough equivalent of this, and there's a lot of holes in this analogy, but it's the best I got. So the hippocampus acts like a file allocation table on your laptop, and it says, okay, that Word document that you saved last night, I want you to go get this chunk from there. So you get a paragraph here, a sentence or two here, maybe just punctuation here, and it stitches it back together. It strings it back together. And so every now and then, when your hard drive gets corrupted or your file allocation, the FAT, exFAT is like a form of formatting, your file allocation table gets corrupted, then what your computer tells you, sorry, it's a corrupted file. And I'm like, well, crap, just why don't you give me like whatever is not corrupted, right? Why can't you give me the 57 pages out of 60 of my dissertation instead of just telling me it's all lost? So what happens is that every now and then you can revive that memory. You can get access to that stored sector of the hard disk by bypassing the hippocampus or maybe repairing a little bit of the hippocampus. And so there's ways to do that with hypnotherapy, blah, blah, blah. So in any case, I think that there's a mechanism by which they tamper with our memories to sort of suppress all the trauma. And it's arguably a sign of compassion, but it's also scientifically valuable because if they want to come back and get us, down the line, it kind of makes sense that it's all new. If I could, I've said this a hundred times, if I could have taken away my black Labrador Retriever's memory about every time that I brought him to the vet, I'd do it in a heartbeat, right? Because then he wouldn't get all anxious. I mean, it got to the point sometimes where I had to physically pick him up out of the car. He was 115 pounds. And I had to haul his butt into the doctor's office or, grab him by his harness. And he just didn't want to go because he knew he had like a torn ligament or whatever, and they had to hold him down. It was terrifying. So if I could remove that memory from him, I'd do it in a heartbeat, right? Because then the next time I got to bring him to the vet, he's calm and he's like happy-go-lucky like he always was, looking everybody in the face. So there's that level. So that's level 2 of forgiveness is forgive them, right? They're just trying to get their work done, like the big.
By the way, what's the name of your book? You never say the name of your book. You gotta always be selling.
We're working
John?
we're working on the website for it. So 2 books. One is the Killer Rescue Robot Knot, KNOT. That's to try to tamp down this fear of killer robots. And then there's the it's the Abduction Amnesty Knot, which is to tamp down the fear of what's going on, the whole disclosure thing. And so the subtitles on each, for the robot book, it's The Case for Robot-Assisted Rescue in a Modern World. And the subtitle for the other one, which is the most important part, is A Path to Forgiveness in the Disclosure Age. And so the 3 components of forgiveness are forgive the government, assuming they come forward, and they got to be open kimono. They got to show us everything they've got so that the abductees are feeling validated, right? See, I don't want to start flipping people off and whatever, but that's how a lot of us feel, right?
Right.
You didn't believe me for 80 years, right? So, and then the third component is to get us to forgive ourselves. Even if you weren't taken, you as a father especially, or as a mother, if you didn't take a bullet for your kid, then you're a horrible parent. If you didn't lay out your life to prevent your kid from being grabbed in that blue beam and hauled up aboard, whatever that vessel was, whether it was a triangle or a disc or a diamond, doesn't really matter, that you watched your kid being taken. Whitley Strieber told me about this. One of the most horrible events of his entire life was knowing that his son was up there and there was nothing he could do. And so the trauma that you go through as a parent, you got to forgive yourself because there really wasn't anything you could do. And so that's the string of at least 3 paths of amnesty that you're granting in this whole effort. So that's I go through that case, the logic of it, I guess, scientifically as I can, along with some speculation of us being in a galactic society. That's the only thing that connects all the dots for me. And I offer that up to others, that the number of different species that have been described in these procedures in this literature over here, it spans the gamut. There's at least, Richard Olin has in the back of his book, 36 different sketches of different beings, widely variant. And it reminds me of the American Kennel Club, or what's the dog show movie, the hilarious comedy on Best in Show, right?
Wow.
All the variable, look at how many different subspecies of canines we have. You've got Chihuahuas to a monstrous, yeah, they all have 4 legs, but to consider them all in the same, I mean, it's wild. So that image came to my mind almost immediately when I saw those pictures when I was reading Richard's book. So that, and then you've got Haim Eshed, Israeli general saying, hey, Trump's read in, and there's a Galactic Federation. He knows about it, blah, blah, blah. You got Paul Hellyer, defense minister of Canada, saying the same thing.
Yeah, that's the whole Serpo thing. That's some weird stuff. I mean, I have no idea what to believe with that, but the training, like putting somebody in a box.
The special ops training we went through.
Sear, yeah, I know. Yeah.
Scarier than that for me, anyway. I don't know. But anyway, so that's my perspective, is we're on the verge of being allowed into a galactic society, but we're failing the test. We're like immigrants failing the test to come into the United States because we're identifying ourselves as red or blue or this or that, rather than just frickin' be nice to each other. For crying, how about golden ruling? For crying out loud. And we've got to get ourselves into that mode before we're going to be allowed out there. And
how widespread do you think this, let's say Trump has been read in on exactly what Hachette has said. How many people do you think actually know this secret?
Got nothing. I got nothing. The legacy guys, the guys that have been in that program or whatever, they might have a better idea. I just don't know. Just don't know what I don't know. I was a vice president at SAIC for a few months.
Yeah, my old boss just joined the board.
Oh, really? Oh, interesting.
Yeah, John Tian, he wrote my recommendation to business school.
Oh,
but
wow.
Yeah, he just joined the board. It's weird.
He'd be the person to ask that question.
He would not. He's super, because his last job was number 2 at the Department of Homeland Security, and I think he went to at the Kennedy School. He had some presentation, but he was no questions about that stuff. Yeah.
Well, so this is the only part of anything that I can blow a whistle on, is what I call corrosive leadership. Pete Blaber, in his 3rd book, the Tillman book, he talks about, what does he call it? He calls it toxic leadership.
Well, I think there's an Air Force general that he didn't get along with around, what was that big Anaconda, Operation Anaconda? There was a lot of people that unnecessarily were hard, but there was like some Air Force general that he didn't get, some general that he didn't get along with.
You could talk to him about that, but I'm talking about the concept of treating your own troops, your own soldiers, worse than POWs, torturing your own soldiers just for coming to tell you, I had a weird experience, or you knowing that they had a weird experience because your truck that you're riding in was suddenly dropped at the bottom of Newell Dam 10 miles away. I'm talking about Mario Woods, of course, and in mud, a circle of mud in the middle of the South Dakota tundra. How does that happen? And so what do you do with that guy? You make him stand at attention for frickin', 45 minutes and be interrogated? And what do you do with Terry Lovelace? He's got burned retinas. The bottom of his feet are burned. He's clearly suffering from the same sort of radiation sickness. I shouldn't say clearly. I mean, I'm not an MD, so
and you force him to take sodium amytal, right?
Yeah. What the hell? No, the worst thing was he had burned retinas, and they put the lights on. The nurse told the AFOSI guys, we have a protocol for this patient in this room, low lighting. And as soon as he hears that, flicks the lights on, tells the nurse to get the hell out of there, and proceeds with the interrogation. Who does that to their own freaking troops? Right?
Yeah.
It's that corrosive. And then what do? You separate him from his buddy? You know, we know that the best way to inspire resilience, to overcome PTSD, is to talk about it with your mates, right? And what has this topic done to our military? We divide people. We split them up. You never talk to each other again. So what sort of secret could be worth injecting that level of corrosion into our structure? The military, as you well know from your time in service, and I want to thank you for the risk that you accepted on behalf of your fellow Americans. I don't like this, thank you for your service. That's not it. It's thank you for the risk that you signed up for. So in any case, we thrive on cohesion, right? And so what these people are doing, AFOSI and all the people that the derivatives from this toxic compartmentation is corrosive to cohesion, obviously. And it's not just small units splitting guys from the same squad up. It's the science community, right? I got to tell you, when I reported into Air Force Research Lab and I ran straight into this, compartmentation obsession, I lost all motivation. I was a lousy freaking scientist. All the wind came out of my sails. There was a little bit of ego of it too, because they kind of demoted me by honor my previous time in service, whatever. But it's way worse, because if you can't collaborate with each other, then what the hell, how do you stay motivated in your little laboratory? And the breakthrough innovation depends upon breadth, right? So what a lot of people, and Jake talks about this, he was a tremendous musician, won that science fair project based on his math and coloration
frequency, right,
of fifths and so forth. So it's that expansion out into other endeavors that give you the insight to really come up with a creative solution that nobody ever thought of. And it was because you were in the choir, right? It wasn't because of your physics class. It was the choir thing that gave you that. So to isolate those people, so the people in the choir can't talk to the people in the math department, they can't talk to the chemist, right? That division, that is holding humanity back. That is backwards. That is detrimental to society, but it's most detrimental to the military, the cohesion thing. And so if you're going to call this a threat, I vehemently disagree with that. But if you're going to call this a threat, then why are you breaking us apart with this ridiculous assault on cohesion? That makes no sense. At any time one of my guys had reported some anomalous thing to me from an OP, from an observation post or a listening post, OPLP, and come back to me and say, hey, boss, something wacky going on out here. And if I berated him
you never get another report again.
I'm going to be dumb. I'm going to be deaf, dumb, and blind as a military unit. This makes no sense. This policy has to stop. And it is carried on for 80 freaking years. It makes no doggone sense. And so that's what I want to blow the whistle on at this point, is how the experiencers in uniform, and clearly the citizens, right? How can we claim that we're defending citizens when you threaten a witness's kids with their lives, right? Jesse Marcel's kids threatened with their lives? Come on. So this brings me back to the former Soviet Union, right? The Soviet Union collapsed because it was so tyrannical that it rotted from the inside. What are we doing right now with this issue? So anyway, I'm sorry. You tripped a wire there. I got on my soapbox. I apologize.
No, the East Germans had a word for it. Zersetzung, right?
What was it?
Zersetzung.
Zersetzung. Yes, I love it. It
means decomposition, right? It's the Stasi's effort of just isolating people, and they don't even know why they're being isolated, and it just slowly drives them crazy. And they did that because torture was no longer working.
Right.
Yeah. So
the sad state of affairs.
Yeah. Any final words for the audience? I kept you way too.
No, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I'll try to connect up with you to link you up with Carr and some of these other folks that I talked about.
Absolutely. I would love to interview all of them. So
Wonderful.
Thank you, Dr. Blitch. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Have a great night. Bye now.
You too.
If you enjoyed today's video, please hit like and subscribe, and also hit the notification button so you can be notified whenever I post new content. Thank you. Now, if you're enjoying the channel and you want to support it, there are several things you can do. In fact, there are 5 things you can do. The first thing you can do is just buy my books. I got plenty of books out in the market right now, and I would prefer that folks buy a book rather than giving me direct support, because they get something out of it. They get a real tangible product. The second way you can support me is by becoming a member on YouTube or becoming a patron on Patreon. And just go to either site and it'll explain everything. The third way you can support the channel is by checking out my merch site, which is here. There's plenty of stuff that you can get to support the channel. And I'd appreciate that you have it and can wear it. Not only do you help support the channel, but you also help promote the channel, and I appreciate that. The fourth way that you can support the channel, and this is really easy, is anytime you want to buy something on Amazon, literally just go to the description below and click on any link, literally any link. The channel gets a cut of that, and it costs you no extra money. You just go through the link, as I'm part of the Amazon Affiliates Club. The fifth and final way you can support the channel is through donations. Now, I don't prefer these because it's more of an expression of gratitude, but you don't really get anything out of it as a subscriber to the channel. However, if you decide to do these options, there's 2 options. There's Buy Me a Coffee, which is a separate site, and there's also, you can go through YouTube with either a super chat, super sticker, or a super thanks. Again, I prefer Buy Me a Coffee because that organization takes less money than Amazon does. But either way, I appreciate any support you are willing to give the channel. So thank you very much, and keep watching. I really appreciate it.